Texas.
Yeah.
You are.
Dutton Ranch Season 2 is confirmed. A brand new showrunner is already in position, and everything the Season 1 finale of this show just detonated across Rio Paloma has turned what began as a story about Beth and Rip building something new into something far more dangerous, far more personal, and far more connected to the wider Yellowstone universe than anyone watching Episode 1 could have predicted. Will Mariano Reyes, the man Joaquin called into action with a single phone call that actor Juan Pablo Raba described publicly as pressing a nuclear button, become the defining villain not just of Season 2, but of this entire series? Will the Season 1 finale's all-out war between the Duttons and the Jackson cartel end with Rob Will dead, or does Jai Courtney survive long enough to become a Season 2 complication that nobody saw coming? Is Carter running away from home the rupture that reshapes his entire arc in Season 2, finally pushing him from a boy in emotional freefall toward the man the Dutton name actually demands? Will Season 2 deliver the Dutton Ranch and Marshals crossover that Cole Hauser, Kelly Riley, and the entire fanbase have been demanding since both shows premiered, with Tate's abduction by Tom Weaver making Texas not just a possibility, but a narrative inevitability? And what does Benjamin Cavell, the man who spent 6 seasons writing for Justified and created SEAL Team from scratch, actually do with Beth and Rip's story when he gets his hands on it from Episode 1 of Season 2? Every single one of those questions has an answer, and this breakdown goes deep on all of them. If this channel has been delivering the breakdowns that make the Yellowstone universe make sense every single week, then hitting subscribe and leaving a like right now takes 2 seconds, and it means the Season 2 analysis starts the moment that first official trailer drops. So hit both, and let's get into it. The single most important development the Season 1 finale of Dutton Ranch just put into motion for Season 2 is Mariano Reyes arriving in Rio Paloma as a fully active, fully visible force, and the consequences of that arrival are going to reshape every single relationship in this show's entire character structure. The evidence that Mariano was always the most powerful figure in this story has been building since Episode 3, when a voice on a phone gave instructions that no ordinary rancher gives, and fans tracking the Dutton Rules breakdown correctly identified that voice as Joaquin's biological father long before the show confirmed it. Episode 7's 1981 flashback then recontextualized everything that came before it. Mariano was the young ranch hand assigned to protect Beulah Jackson the night she was assaulted at Billy Bob's, Texas. He failed. He found her afterward. He became the emotional center of the worst night of her life, and then disappeared entirely from the public story, while Beulah built the 10-petal ranch mythology on top of that buried wound. The actor playing Mariano in the Season 1 finale is Raul Max Trujillo, and that casting choice communicates immediately that this is not a one-episode antagonist being introduced to service a plot point. When the unknown figure in the finale trailer turns directly to Beulah and tells her she will send her strangers packing, or he will, everything about that moment positions Mariano as the dominant authority in Rio Paloma's criminal architecture. Not Rob Will, not the Jackson family, not the cartel operating behind the stolen Mexican cattle. Mariano. The most likely explanation for what Season 2 builds toward is that Mariano has been the silent architect of 10-Petal Ranch's criminal infrastructure for decades, with Beulah installed as the public face that made everything look legitimate, and that the Season 1 finale is the moment that arrangement collapses under the weight of its own buried history. If this theory proves correct, then Season 2 does not simply give Beth and Rip a new enemy. It gives them the enemy who was always there, who never intended to share Rio Paloma with strangers, and who now has every reason to remove the Duttons from a situation they walked into, without understanding what they were standing on top of. However, unfortunately, the most dangerous thing about Mariano, as a Season 2 villain, is not his cartel connections or his capacity for violence. It is the fact that Joaquin called him. Because every conversation Mariano has with Beth and Rip in Season 2 will happen in the shadow of the knowledge that the person who activated him was the son he gave away, and that Joaquin is going to spend all of Season 2 living with the consequences of pressing that nuclear button. But the Mariano arrival raises the question that every fan watching the Season 1 finale is holding at the center of their attention, and that is the question of whether Rob Will Jackson survives the night. The evidence from the finale trailer is not subtle about what is coming for him. Rip is physically fighting Rob Will at the 10-Petal Ranch slaughterhouse. Beth walks into that same facility and tells Rob Will directly that he is already a dead man. Oriana is screaming in a way that sounds like someone who has just witnessed something she can never take back. In every Yellowstone franchise finale across the entire history of this universe, the dominant villain of the season meets their end before the credits roll. The Beck brothers, Garrett Randall, Sarah Atwood, and Rob Will Jackson is unambiguously Dutton Ranch Season 1's dominant villain. He murdered Wes Ayers in Episode 1. He terrorized Joaquin throughout the entire season. He forced Beulah into the single worst public choice of her life at the anniversary party. He ran an illegal cattle smuggling operation on top of a legitimate family legacy that predates the Civil War. The most logical conclusion is that Rob Will does not walk out of the Season 1 finale. However, unfortunately, his death does not resolve the problem at the center of this story. It creates an entirely new one, because the question of who kills him and whether that killing is witnessed is the thread that Season 2 pulls on from its very first scene. If Rip is the person who kills Rob Will, and the trailer strongly implies a physical confrontation between them, then the murder weapon problem that defines so much of Season 1 simply regenerates in Season 2, with Rip's hands dirty again in Texas, the way they were dirty at Yellowstone. And if Oriana witnesses her father's death at Rip's hands, her choice about what to do with that knowledge becomes the most emotionally combustible storyline in the entire next season, because she is Carter's person, and that means whatever she decides, it lands inside the Dutton household. The Season 2 storyline that the fanbase is arguably most emotionally invested in is Carter, and the way Dutton Ranch handles his arc under Benjamin Cavell will reveal everything about what kind of show this becomes in its second chapter. Carter running away from home at the end of Episode 8 is not a teenager throwing a tantrum. It is a 19-year-old who has spent his entire journey across Yellowstone and Dutton Ranch being pulled between who he actually is and what the people who chose to protect him need him to become, and who finally broke under the combined weight of his feelings for Oriana, the destruction he caused at the anniversary party, quitting school without telling Beth, and falling apart in front of Rip at the 10-Petal, while trying and failing to be a working ranch hand. Finn Little plays Carter's damage with enough quiet containment that the audience never stops caring about him, even when his choices are genuinely destructive, and what Season 2 needs to do, what it has been building towards since Beth told him that the hard parts are coming and she needs him ready, is stop using Carter as a device to create secondary tension and make him a full, consequential participant in whatever Dutton Ranch is actually building toward as a story. The most compelling theory among fans is that Carter's return in Season 2 is the moment where his choices stop being about surviving the emotional weight of the Dutton household and start being about protecting it. Beth's words to him were not comfort, they were a contract, and Season 2 is where that contract comes due, in a way that costs Carter something real. While the main storylines dominate the conversation, the development that is quietly generating the most long-term excitement for Season 2 comes from entirely outside Dutton Ranch's own narrative, and it connects directly to what the Marshals Season 1 finale just did on CBS. Tom Weaver's decision to put Tate Dutton on a private jet headed for Texas at the end of Marshals Season 1 is not a geographic coincidence. Taylor Sheridan does not place Casey's son on a plane toward the same state as Beth and Rip without knowing exactly what he is building toward. The evidence that a crossover between Dutton Ranch and Marshals is not just a fan dream but a narrative inevitability continues to mount from multiple directions simultaneously. Marshals showrunner Spencer Hudnut confirmed in an interview that reuniting Beth and Case is something the storytelling of the Yellowstone universe demands. Kelly Riley publicly said the door is open, describing the possibility of bringing those worlds together again as something she would welcome. Cole Hauser told The Hollywood Reporter directly that he would love to see Rip and Case share the screen again, calling Luke Grimes one of his closest friends and saying he would like to see some peace between those two characters for once. The most natural entry point for that crossover is Season 2 of Dutton Ranch, where Tate's presence somewhere in Texas gives Case a reason to come south, and where Beth, having just survived a cartel war, a partner running away, and a business partner revealed as a criminal front, has every reason to want her brother standing in the same county. However, unfortunately, a crossover of this scale requires coordination between Paramount Plus and CBS, which are two completely separate networks operating under different scheduling structures, and that logistical reality is the one obstacle that no amount of fan enthusiasm can simply override. The crossover is coming. Whether it comes in Season 2 or whether it is the event the franchise uses to anchor Season 3, depends entirely on how quickly both shows can align their production timelines under the same creative umbrella. The behind-the-scenes change that deserves the most serious attention heading into Season 2 is Benjamin Cavell's arrival as showrunner, not because it signals instability, but because of the specific creative DNA Cavell carries into this show, and what that DNA is going to do to how Dutton Ranch sounds and feels from its very first Season 2 scene. Cavell spent 6 full seasons writing for Justified, which remains the gold standard for neo-Western dialogue in American television, a show where every conversation carries the accumulated weight of history and every threat lands with the precision of a legal verdict. He then created SEAL Team, which demonstrated his ability to build the kind of ensemble loyalty that keeps a large cast emotionally coherent across 7 seasons of production. Kelly Riley herself acknowledged publicly that the transition to Cavell is a step in the right direction, and the fact that both she and Cole Hauser were reportedly central to the decision to move on from creator Chad Feehan signals something important about Season 2. The people whose performances define this show have genuine creative investment in its direction, and they chose Cavell. Beth Dutton has always been the most complex female character in the entire Yellowstone franchise, not because of her aggression, but because of the financial intelligence and strategic precision underneath it. And a showrunner with Cavell's background in character-driven neo-Western storytelling is precisely the collaborator needed to push that complexity into territory the show has not yet reached. However, unfortunately, no showrunner announcement resolves the central question that Season 2 must answer from its opening minutes. What is Beth and Rip's actual goal in Texas now that the foundation of everything they built in Season 1 has been revealed as criminal infrastructure? They came to South Texas to build something that was theirs. Season 1 proved that what they built sits directly on top of someone else's buried crime. Season 2 has to decide whether they dismantle it, absorb it into their own empire, or burn everything down and begin again from ground level. And that decision is going to define what Dutton Ranch becomes as a show for as long as it runs. After everything the Season 1 finale has put into motion, Mariano Reyes stepping out of the shadows into the center of Rio Paloma, Rob Will Jackson meeting the end the Yellowstone franchise always delivers for its dominant villains, Carter running toward something the audience cannot yet see, Oriana screaming at a moment that is going to shape Season 2's emotional core, and a new showrunner bringing Justified's creative precision into a world that has always been capable of that level of sharpness. The one question every fan is now locked onto is the simplest and most urgent one of all. When does Season 2 actually arrive? As of today, Paramount Plus has confirmed the renewal and Benjamin Cavell's appointment as showrunner, but a Season 2 premiere date has not been announced and production has not yet begun. With the Season 1 finale only just airing on July 3, 2026, and Cavell having joined the project at the very end of June, the most realistic projection based on how the Yellowstone franchise has operated historically places a Season 2 premiere somewhere in 2027, most likely the first half of the year if production begins in late 2026 as expected. Season 1 of Dutton Ranch launched as the single biggest original series debut in Paramount Plus history, drawing 12.9 million streaming viewers in its first 7 days, and topping the Nielsen streaming charts in its debut week. Paramount is not going to allow that audience to go cold for any longer than the production timeline absolutely requires. Based on everything the network has signaled and everything Cavell has been brought in to build, the wait is going to be worth it. But based on what the Season 1 finale just set into motion, that wait is going to feel considerably longer than it should. Now the conversation moves to the fans. Does Mariano Reyes become the villain of Season 2, who makes Rob Will look like a minor problem in comparison? The man who turns Rio Paloma into a genuine war zone rather than a family dispute? Or does the Season 1 finale find a way to neutralize his threat before the credits roll and leave Season 2 building towards something the audience genuinely cannot anticipate? And is the Dutton Ranch and Marshals crossover happening in Season 2, the moment this entire franchise has been building toward? Beth and Case in the same place, at the same time, for the first time since Yellowstone ended? Or does the franchise spend one more season teasing that reunion before it finally delivers? Drop those answers in the comments right now, because this debate is already running, and the channel wants to hear exactly where the community lands on both. If this breakdown gave the Season 2 predictions the depth they deserved, if this is the kind of analysis that makes every Friday in the Yellowstone universe worth showing up for, then a subscribe and a like right now takes 2 seconds, and make sure the Season 2 trailer breakdown is waiting before the first frame of that footage even finishes loading. The video on screen covers everything else fans need to know about where Dutton Ranch goes from here.